From Capitol Hill, Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Senator, thank you very much for being with us.
Good morning.
So, do you think this, there's not a lot of support for this bill. It even appears within the Republican Party in some ways, but do you think it's fixable?
Well, let's see. All the Democrats hate it and half the Republicans hate it, so that means about 25% of the people like it. No, it's got to get better, and I think, what could be a solution. You remember Henry Clay's compromise of 1850? It couldn't pass. He broke it into 4 pieces, and they passed them individually. I think if we take this bill and split it into 2 pieces, we pass one that is looks like repeal, that conservatives like, and then the other one you load up with all kinds of Christmas ornaments and gifts and money and just pile money on it that the Democrats will vote for and some of the Republicans will vote for, and then I think both end up passing. It may not be completely good for the country, but you at least get the repeal that way.
So you repeal, and what do you have in its place if you start with repeal and you wait to do the rest?
Well, what you do is the things that the Democrats won't do. You can repeal the taxes. You can repeal some of the regulations. I'd prefer all of them. And you can also do some Medicaid reform. That could be in a repeal bill, and it would be much narrower and much cleaner repeal. But then to the people who want, billions of dollars in new spending, the people who want to retain a lot of the Obamacare spending, that could be put in another bill. There's another bill coming forward called the S-chip bill. It's a bill that typically all the Democrats vote for and some Republicans, loaded up with all the goodies that everybody wants. And so then the fiscal conservatives would get the repeal, and the fiscally less concerned would get all their spending.
Yeah. I'm looking at the date. It's June 29th, 2017. The Republican has been talking about this for how many years? And they've come up with the bill. The bill that this president is pushing is just, it's ruinous. Are you surprised at how little has gotten done, given how big an issue this is for your party?
Well, I think the problem is that for years and years, Republicans said we were for repealing it, ripping it out, root and branch. But then we got to the discussion, we discovered that about 1/3 of our caucus wants to keep large portions of Obamacare. So the bill that we currently have before us keeps the Obamacare subsidies, keeps 10 out of 12 of the Obamacare regulations, and actually preserves the Medicaid expansion forever. And the left hates it because they don't believe any of that. Some on the right hate it because we see it as too much big government in an era where every year we have a deficit of about $500 billion, if not more, and a $20 trillion total debt. So there are concerns on the right and the left side. And when both the right and the left hate something, you find that you have a difficulty, I think, getting any popular support.
Senator Paul, it's Willie Geist. Good to see you this morning. Those gifts and goodies and Christmas ornaments you described in the spending portion of the bill that you would split up in half, we're talking about Medicaid expansion. We're talking about spending for the opioid crisis, which obviously has affected your state. And I understand the onus and the burden that the Medicaid expansion has put on states to carry so much of that cost, and will get even greater as we go forward. But there are an awful lot of people in your state who benefit from it. What do you say to them if that is rolled back over time? I'm talking about Medicaid expansion, and they're no longer covered. What happens to those people?
What I'd like to do is actually expand the insurance market, expand the employment market. And one of the things that I've been advocating for, 20 million people were left without insurance under Obamacare. Nobody talks about that. 20 million people do not have insurance under Obamacare. What I'm for is something that actually expands beyond Obamacare. I'm for letting every individual in the market join a co-op or a buying group, and then they would be part of a large group. They'd be protected against pre-existing conditions, but they'd also be able to get a cheaper price. But this only works if you free up and get rid of the mandates and regulations, because you have to legalize inexpensive insurance. Right now in America, Obamacare made it illegal to buy inexpensive insurance, and as a consequence, millions of people don't buy it, and you got the death spiral of Obamacare because you priced people out of the marketplace.
Senator, do you think, just in principle and broadly speaking, that Medicaid has been a benefit and a good thing to the state of Kentucky?
I think what you have to do is you have to decide what you can afford, and you have to be honest about how you pay for it. So, for example, yes, there are people who definitely cannot help themselves that Medicaid helps. Do I want 50% of Kentucky to be on Medicaid or 5%? My preference would be to have 95% working and 5% on Medicaid, and I think we could afford that. But the dishonesty of Obamacare was they put everybody on Medicaid and they said it will be free. It's manna from heaven. The federal government will pay for it. And we have a printing press up here, the Federal Reserve. So we just borrow money to pay for Medicaid expansion.
Right.
What we should do is we should say to Kentucky and every other state, if you want to expand Medicaid, you're welcome to, but you got to pay for it. Then we would have a discussion. So in Kentucky, if we double our state income tax to pay for Medicaid, you know what? We might lose some business and jobs to Tennessee because they have no income tax. That would be an honest debate. You'd have to weigh the pros and cons of higher taxes versus higher spending. That would be honest government and honest deliberative debate.
Senator, I think everybody would like to see 95% of the people working. We'd like to see 100% of the people working so they don't have to be on Medicaid, but the reality is they're not. There's unemployment. There's a lot of it in your state. So again,
well, actually, we only have about 4.5% to 5% unemployment. We have institutional unemployment, the people who are no longer looking. So we have to fix that.
That's right.
But I would say that we have differences between Republicans and Democrats on how we get there.
Right.
As a Republican, we believe less regulation, lower taxes, smaller federal government leaves more money in the marketplace and you'll have more jobs. Democrats want more debt, more taxes, and more regulations, and that's what the last election was about, and they rejected Hillary Clinton because of that.
So you feel confident, because there are people who are working who still need Medicaid, who still benefit from it because of how little money they make. You feel confident that if this were to become law and that there was some Medicaid rollback included in this bill, that the people who now enjoy coverage under Medicaid would quickly and seamlessly be covered? In other words, people are worried in your state. They say, okay, if you take that away from me, what happens next? Is there a month, or 6 months, a year? What happens to my coverage and my family?
Well, first of all, I don't support the current bill and won't vote for it unless it changes or gets better. But what I would say is that what is falsely reported by a lot of people is that Medicaid's being taken away. Medicaid expansion is never taken away. Medicaid expansion is extended into perpetuity, forever. What we do is we ask after about, I think, 7 years, or actually gradually over 7 years, that the states begin to pay some of it.
Right.
Even after 7 years, Kentucky would only pay 30% of it. But most people in Kentucky government, including the governor, have said they probably can't afford to pay 30% of it, which means that if they can't afford it and the federal government has a $500 billion deficit, maybe we need to reevaluate trying to get the marketplace to offer cheaper insurance to people.
Do you agree or disagree, Senator, that there are $772 billion or something like that pulled out of Medicaid in this bill, as the CBO has said?
No, not really, because it's Washington math. Medicaid goes up like this, and under this bill, Medicaid goes up like this. So it slows down the rate of growth of Medicaid, but actually it's even worse than that. When you look at the curve, it's somewhat of an exponential curve without some controls. So, you know, Pat Toomey's been good at trying to get some controls on the Medicaid cost, but it doesn't cut Medicaid, it just slows down the rate of growth.
So there will not be fewer people covered by Medicaid if this becomes law? I just want to make sure I have you right on this.
Actually, I think what happens is Medicaid expansion never goes away. States are forced to pay for it. Now, CBO may say that, oh, states won't pay for it, so maybe less people would have Medicaid. But I think under the law, I don't believe it denies anybody on Medicaid. That's why I think the bill's exceedingly generous. And so it's interesting that we live in such a polarized society. The Democrats can't see that at all, and Republicans are still worried that we're keeping, conservative Republicans are worried that we're keeping Obamacare, and Democrats think it's absolutely draconian. There have been some honest reports, though. There was one the other day saying that basically this is a synthesis of Obamacare and Republican ideas, and that's truly what it is, and actually keeps a lot of Obamacare, and that's why it's not going to work. I mean, the death spiral of Obamacare will continue, and we're going to dump a bunch of insurance bailout subsidies on it, and I cannot in good conscience vote to give money to an industry that makes $15 billion a year.
Yeah.
That's crazy to give taxpayer money to the insurance companies.
And Mika, just as a matter of fact, though, there is less spending on Medicaid, and it does roll back over time.
Yeah, and
it's less of an increase, but there's never less money in Medicaid, less of an increase in Medicaid each year.
So, Senator Rand Paul, thank you very much. Let's talk more about